Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Friday, January 25th, 2019. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's college basketball, NBA, and NHL games, look ahead to tonight's slate in each of those games, go over the finals for each the men's and the women's side for the Australian Open. Tonight, I believe, is the women's final, so I'll pick that and then I'll preview a little bit of the men's. NFL mock draft, NHL power rankings, and go over the All-Stars before the All-Star game tomorrow. Best bet at the end of the podcast, and I'll discuss the NBA All-Star starters that were revealed last night. We'll start with college hoops. A lot of games last night. I discussed this yesterday. IUPUI defeated Oakland 73-71. It was a matinee game. IUPUI is 12-9. Oakland's 9-12. Number 6, Michigan State defeats number 19, Iowa 82-67. A very impressive win for Tom Izzo's team. They're 18-2, and Iowa is 16-4. Fairleigh Dickinson defeats St. Francis Brooklyn 60-58. Dickinson goes to 8-11, and St. Francis Brooklyn drops to 12-8. Texas Arlington defeats Georgia Southern 72-67. Texas Arlington 9-11, and Georgia Southern 12-8. Wagner defeats St. Francis Pennsylvania 83-79. Wagner 9-9. St. Francis 7-11. UNC Wilmington defeats William & Mary 93-88. UNC Wilmington 8-13, William & Mary 7-13. Robert Morris defeats Sacred Heart 72-64. Robert Morris 11-9, Sacred Heart 8-12. Cincinnati defeats Tulsa 88-64. Cincinnati 17-3, Tulsa 12-8. Bryant defeats Central Connecticut State 63-60. Bryant is 7-11, Central Connecticut's 8-12. Jacksonville defeats North Florida 86-81. Jacksonville 9-12, UNF is 9-13. Wright State defeats Milwaukee 56-54. Wright State 11-10. Milwaukee 9-12. UC Greensboro defeats the Citadel 83-60. Greensboro 18-3 and Citadel 9-10. Mount St. Mary's defeats LIU Brooklyn 74-72. Mount St. Mary's 5-15. LIU Brooklyn 9-10. Radford defeats Charleston Southern 86-78. Radford 15-6. Charleston Southern 7-11. Winthrop defeats Gardner-Webb 97-88. Winthrop 14-6. Weber 12-8. Siena defeats Fairfield 57-48. Siena 8-11. Fairfield 5-15. Campbell defeats Presbyterian 77-73. Campbell 11-8. Presbyterian 12-10. Longwood defeats High Point 55-51. Longwood 13-9. High Point 10-9. Temple defeats Memphis 85-76. Temple 15-4, Memphis 12-7. Canisius defeats Monmouth 80-66. Canisius 8-11, Monmouth 6-15. Northern Kentucky defeats Green Bay 87-65. Northern Kentucky 17-4, Green Bay 10-11. Utah Valley defeats UMKC 75-67. Utah Valley 14-7, UMKC 7-13. Wofford defeats Sanford 107-106 in overtime on a buzzer beater tip-in to give Wofford to win. Storm Murphy, the 15-footer, as time expired. Wofford 16-4, Sanford 12-9. Hampton defeats South Carolina Upstate 88-70. Hampton 8-10, Upstate 5-17. North Alabama defeats Kennesaw State 76-71. North Alabama 8-14, Kennesaw 3-18. Hofstra defeats James Madison 85-68. That is 15 straight wins for Hofstra. They're 18-3 on the year. James Madison is 9-12. Towson defeats Northeastern 75-72. Towson 7-14, Northeastern 11-9. Furman defeats Chattanooga 73-58. Furman 16-4, Chattanooga 10-11. Charleston defeats Elan 72-53. Charleston 15-6, Elan 6-15. NJIT defeats Stetson 82-59. NJIT 16-5, Stetson 4-17. Texas State defeats Georgia State 81-68. Texas State 17-3. Georgia State 14-6. Lipscomb defeats Florida Gulf Coast 89-81. Lipscomb 15-4. Florida Gulf Coast 7-14. Eastern Kentucky defeats Jacksonville State 88-70. Eastern Kentucky 10-10. Jacksonville State 14-6. Coastal Carolina defeats Little Rock 72-71. Coastal 9-9. Little Rock 7-13. Mercer defeats VMI 88-68. Mercer 8-12, VMI 7-13. Omaha defeats Purdue Fort Wayne 85-79 in overtime. Omaha 12-8, Purdue Fort Wayne 12-10. Morehead State defeats Tennessee Tech 67-61. Morehead 8-12, Tennessee Tech 6-14. Number 23, Louisville defeats number 21, NC State 84-77. Louisville 14-5, NC State 15-4. UAB upsets North Texas 52-49. UAB 13-7, North Texas 17-3. Yale Monroe defeats Troy 75-69. Yale Monroe 11-7, Troy 10-9. South Dakota State defeats North Dakota State 87-69. South Dakota State 16-6, North Dakota State 9-12. Louisiana defeats South Alabama 88-84. Louisiana 12-7, South Alabama 9-11. UIC defeats Detroit Mercy 79-67. UIC 10-11, Detroit 8-12. Seattle defeats Chicago State 75-47. Seattle 13-8, Chicago State 3-17. Rice defeats Middle Tennessee 79-68. Rice 8-12, Middle Tennessee 5-13. Arkansas State defeats Appalachian State 82-81 in overtime. Arkansas State 9-11, Appalachian 5-14. UTSA defeats Charlotte 88-43. UTSA 11-9, Charlotte 5-14. Syracuse defeats Miami 73-53. Syracuse 14-5, Miami 9-9. Western Kentucky defeats Southern Miss 66-63. Western Kentucky 11-9, Southern Miss 11-9. SIU Edwardsville defeats Southeast Missouri State 87-86 in triple overtime. Edwardsville 6-13. Southeast Missouri State 6-14. Eastern Illinois defeats Tennessee Martin 66-64. Eastern Illinois 12-8. Tennessee Martin 5-13. Belmont defeats Murray State 79-66. Belmont 14-4. Murray State 15-3. Great win for Rick Bird's team. Old Dominion defeats UTEP 50-48. Old Dominion 16-5. UTEP 6-12. Washington defeats Oregon 61-56. Washington 15-4. Oregon 11-8. Northern Colorado defeats Southern Utah 79-68. Northern Colorado 13-7. Southern Utah 9-8. Louisiana Tech defeats Marshall 89-80 in overtime. Louisiana Tech 14-7. Marshall 12-8. Austin Peay defeats Tennessee State 89-74. Austin Peay 14-6. Tennessee State 5-14. Weber State defeats Montana State 93-84. Weber State 13-6. Montana State 7-11. Utah defeats Stanford 70-66. Utah 10-8. Stanford 9-10. USC defeats Arizona 80-57. Impressive win for the Trojans. They're 11-8. Arizona's 14-6. Montana defeats Idaho State 80-69. Montana 13-6. Idaho State 7-10. San Francisco defeats Portland 83-61. San Francisco 17-3. Portland 7-14. Cal State Fullerton defeats UC Santa Barbara 81-60. Fullerton 7-12. Santa Barbara 4-14. I'm sorry, 14-4, I should say. San Diego defeats Loyola Marymount 71-58. San Diego 14-7. Marymount 14-6. CSU Bakersfield defeats Cal Baptist 88-84. Bakersfield 14-6. Baptist 10-8. Portland State defeats Eastern Washington 78-65. Portland State 7-11. Eastern Washington 5-13. Sacramento State defeats Idaho 69-48. Sacramento State 8-8. Idaho 4-14. Number 4 Gonzaga defeats Santa Clara 98-39. Just a beatdown by who I think is arguably the best team in the country. They're 9-2, Gonzaga, and Santa Clara is 11-10. Oregon State defeats Washington State 90-77. Oregon 12-6 was Washington State 8-11. Colorado defeats Cal 68-59. Colorado 11-7. Cal 5-14. BYU defeats St. Mary's 71-66. BYU 13-9. St. Mary's 13-8. And last but not least, Arizona State defeats UCLA 84-73. Bobby Hurley gets a big win. They're 14-5 and UCLA is 10-9. Small slate tonight because it's a Friday. You have number 5 Michigan at Indiana on Fox Sports 1 at 6:30. This is a big game for Indiana. They're going to play desperate, and I think they're going to come out and play hard. Michigan's a 4-point favorite. I'm going to take my chances here and predict Indiana to do what Iowa didn't do yesterday and is pull off a home upset. I don't really love what Michigan has done of late. They should have lost to Minnesota. And I really think that Indiana is just due for a signature win. And Romeo Langford is going to be the best player on the court in this game. And Archie Miller is just overdue for a big conference win to get themselves. I believe they'll be 500 in conference play if they get this win. And they are desperate in their home. So give me Indiana to pull off a home upset as a 4-point dog. Number 14, Buffalo at Kent State, 6:30 on CBS Sports Network. Buffalo is an 8-point favorite. Buffalo had a rare loss the other day on a game-winning shot against Northern Illinois on the road. Kent State is one of the better teams in the MAC. They're not as good as Buffalo, obviously, but they can't not be taken for granted. I'm going to say that Buffalo wins, but Kent State stays within the 8 to keep this game competitive. 7 o'clock ESPNU, Rider at Iona. Riders favored by 3. Tim Cluis's team is down this year. I think Rider's going to win and cover. That game's on ESPNU, so I'm picking it. I usually pick games that are on national TV, and if the team is ranked. Or I should say or in that case. Quinnipiac and Marist, Brown and Yale, and at 8:30 on Fox Sports 1, Butler at Creighton. Creighton's favored by 2.5. This is potentially a loser leaves town game in which the winner of this game gets the leg up in that large bid, and the loser has a big disadvantage. Creighton's home, and I like how they've played of late. Tyshawn Alexander leads the way for the Blue Jays, and they win and cover the 2.5. Yeah, tomorrow's slate is going to be great, and I'll obviously pick those games on tomorrow's podcast in the morning. Next up is the NBA. Only 4 games on yesterday's slate. The Warriors defeat the Wizards 126-118. Another day, another win for Golden State. They're 38-14. Washington's 20-27. Stephen Curry, 38 points. DeMarcus Cousins had 17. Kevin Durant had 21. Off the bench, Andre Iguodala had 11. Meanwhile, on the other side for Washington, Bradley Beal had 22. Trevor Ariza had 27. Thomas Satoransky had 20. Thomas Bryant had 14. Jeff Green had 15. And off the bench, Chase and Randall had 11. The Wizards deserve a lot of credit for keeping this game competitive. They could have won, but Golden State's a better team. And, hey, if you bet the Wizards to cover, you win because they covered. And I didn't think that they'd cover or don't come close because I wasn't sold on the Wizards. But they showed me a lot in a losing effort against the best team in the NBA. The Thunder defeat the Pelicans 122-116, a much-needed win for OKC to get to 30-18. New Orleans is 22-27, take advantage of no Anthony Davis. Paul George, 23 points, 11 boards, 7 assists. Russell Westbrook, 23 points, 17 boards, 16 assists. Terrence Ferguson had 14. Steven Adams had 20. Jeremy Grant had 14. Off the bench, Dennis Schroeder had 10. Meanwhile, for New Orleans, Darius Miller had 21. Jahlil Okafor had 18 with 8 boards. Drew Holiday, 22 with 9 boards and 13 assists. He was a rebound shy of a triple-double. And Alfred Payton, 15 points and 12 assists. He's been a solid addition to the Pelicans. Cheek Diaco had 16 off the bench, and Fred Jackson had 12. Diallo, my bad. The Trailblazers defeat the Suns 120-106. Portland's 30-20. Phoenix is 11-39. Damian Lillard, great game by him, 24 points. Yusuf Nurkic had 16 with 9 boards. CJ McCollum had 20. Off the bench, Jake Layman had 20, and Seth Curry had 17. Devin Booker had 27. Dragon Bender had 17. Off the bench, Kelly Oubre Jr. had 18, and L.A. Okobo had 12. And the Timberwolves defeat the Lakers 120-105. A nice win for Minnesota. Get back to 500 at 24-24. Lakers are 25-24. So, how about this? The Timberwolves and the Lakers are tied in the loss column. That's unbelievable. The Lakers need LeBron James back ASAP. Karl Anthony Towns, great game by him. 27 points, 12 boards, 5 assists. Andrew Wiggins had 23. Taj Gibson had 14. Off the bench, Jared Bayless had 16, including 3 3-pointers. And off the bench with 10, Jared Terrell. And Jeff Teague didn't play due to a coach's decision. That is unusual. but TNT said that he was injured. So I don't know who to believe there. Brendan Ingram had 20. Rajon Rondo in his first game back had 15 with 13 assists. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had 13. Ivica Zubac had 10, as well as Kyle Kuzma. And off the bench, Javal McGee had 10. And Tyson Chandler didn't see the court. Tonight's games at 7 o'clock. You have the Wizards at the Magic, 7:30, the Knicks at the Nets, Heat at the Cavaliers, 8 o'clock, the Clippers at the Bulls, 8 o'clock ESPN, the Raptors at the Rockets. Toronto's a 3-point favorite. Hey, guess what? I'm picking the Raptors. I don't like how the Rockets looked against the Knicks on Wednesday night. Toronto's won so many big games this year. If anybody has won the most big games this year in the NBA, it's been the Toronto Raptors, with the exception of their debacle of a game in San Antonio in which the team was focused on how Kawhi Leonard got booed the entire time. Other than that Spurs disaster, the Raptors have won every big game they've played, it seems like. Kawhi Leonard will play, and I think he'll be the best player on the court, and he'll make himself a case for MVP against the MVP favorite right now in James Harden. I think this is a close game. Wouldn't be shocked if the Raptors won by 2 or 1 and the Rockets covered or pushed. I wouldn't be surprised, obviously, if the Rockets went outright. Chris Paul's close to returning, but it won't be tonight. It'll probably be over the weekend. So giving the Raptors in like a 5-point game, I could see this being like a 115-110 Raptors victory. So a rare opportunity for me picking against the Rockets in their home building. Well, I did it on Christmas Day when they played Oklahoma City, but that came back to bite me a little bit. But I feel good about Toronto tonight. I feel like I need to give the Raptors the respect they deserve, because I think I picked against them in every big road game they've had, with the exception of that Spurs game, because I picked Toronto, and I felt really good about it, and it came back to bite me in the ass. And on the flip side, every other big road game, I picked against them, and they won. It seems like, other than that Celtics game, I picked against them, and they lost. And Boston won, and I obviously, like I said, had Boston. Like, when they played Golden State, I obviously had the Warriors. And when they played the Clippers, I picked the Clippers. And when they played the Lakers in LA, I picked the Lakers. So I feel like every big game they have on the road, I feel like I picked against them. But here I'm going to pick them. The Kings and the Grizzlies, the Pistons at the Mavericks at 8:30, Hornets at the Bucks, 9 o'clock the Suns at the Nuggets, and the Timberwolves at the Jazz. So only one ESPN game tonight, because the X Games begin tonight, and that'll be on after Dark Horse NBA Finals preview. That is the Raptors at the Rockets. Next up, I'm going to pick the women's final, which is overnight at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Naomi Osaka against Petra Kvitova. Kvitova is your 8 seed. Osaka is your 4 seed. This is a phenomenal game. I think both players have had phenomenal tournaments. I think they both have an excellent chance of winning. This is going to be a very competitive match. But I really like how Osaka's played just a little better than Kvitova. Like I said, this is going to be a competitive match. It's going to go a long way. And I think Osaka is going to win the women's side off the Australian Open. Now, obviously, on the men's side, I'll pick it on tomorrow's podcast, because it'll be 3:30 a.m. Saturday into Sunday with Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal. It's the matchup that everybody wanted, 1 versus 2. It's going to have so much hype. I love this matchup. Both of these players have been the best 2 men's tennis players in this tournament, and perhaps over the last couple years, as well as Federer in terms of the best men's tennis players over the last few years. But this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to pick that match on tomorrow's podcast. Now I'm going to discuss the NHL All-Star roster, which is pretty good. A lot of big names. I haven't really gotten into this since they announced it, but here we go. In the Atlantic Division, you have Jack Eichel of the Sabres. Of course, he's one of the best players in the league, and he's only going to get better. Nikita Kucherov of the Lightning. He's been a player that is improved over the last couple years, and he's in his prime. Austin Matthews of the Maple Leafs. Duh. He's their best player. Although you could argue John Tavares. But I'm a big fan of Matthews. Yes, he was hurt a lot of the year, but he's outstanding. Jeff Skinner of the Sabres, who I think is a surprising make, but he's having a good year and a contract year, so it makes sense. David Pastrnak of the Bruins. He's been another player that's trajectory's trending up. Steven Stamkos of the Lightning, of course. He's their captain and has been one of the best players in the league when he was healthy. And I'm happy to see that he's doing healthy this year after a couple issues he had there the past couple playoff seasons. John Tavares of the Maple Leafs. He's obviously having a phenomenal year in his first year in Toronto. Thomas Chabot of the Senators, one of the breakout defensemen this year. It just stinks that Chabot is on a bad team in the East that doesn't get enough attention. Keith Yandle of the Panthers. That one surprises me, but he just puts up assists, and he's just not a great defenseman. He's an offensive defenseman. Jimmy Howard of the Red Wings. He's had a career resurgence over the last few years. I don't think that anybody wants to trade for him because his contract is so bad. Andrei Vasilevsky of the Lightning. He is arguably the best goalie in the East, and he is just sensational. The Metro Division. Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes. This is obviously his first All-Star appearance, and he's a player that is hitting his prime. Cam Atkinson of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's having a great year. Matthew Barzal of the Islanders. He's become the Islanders' best player now that John Tavares is in Toronto. He's having yet another phenomenal year. Sidney Crosby of the Penguins. What else is new? Claude Giroux, the Flyers, he continues to be great. Meanwhile, the Flyers are a disappointment. Kyle Palmieri of the Devils, he's having a career year. John Carlson of the Capitals, he's in his prime, and good on the Capitals for finding a way to re-sign him. Seth Jones of the Blue Jackets, he's having a fine year, one of the best defensemen in the league. Chris Letang of the Penguins continues to play very well. Braden Holtby of the Capitals having a great season after a mediocre regular season last year, and then obviously a great playoff, which helped the Capitals break their Stanley Cup drought. Henrik Lundqvist of the Rangers, he's had a good year. He's just on a bad team. I feel bad for Lundqvist. He obviously wants to stay a Ranger for the rest of his life. He's close with James Dolan, so I don't see the Rangers trading him, although I think the front office asked him if he wanted to be traded, but Hank said no. And that's up to the player because he has a no trade clause in his contract. Central Division. Patrick Kane of the Blackhawks, no surprise there. He's having yet another phenomenal season. It just stinks right now. The Blackhawks are in a bit of mediocrity after winning a couple Stanley Cups. Nathan McKinnon, he has been sensational these last couple years, and he's hitting his prime. Ryan O'Reilly of the Blues, great first year in St. Louis after signing there as a free agent. Mikko Rantanen of Colorado, well-deserved. He's in the top 5 in the league in points right now, so obviously deserving there. Mark Sheffley of the Jets, he's had a sensational year. Blake Wheeler of the Jets, who's also been sensational. Gabriel Landeskog of the Avalanche, so the Avalanche's top 3 forwards all in. Miro Heiskanen of the Stars, one of the breakout defensemen in the NHL this year. Roman Josi of the Predators, he is, I think, eclipsed PK Subban as the best defensive player on the Predators. Devin Dubnyk of the Wild, he's had a fine year. Pekka Rinne of the Predators, he's had a nice little resurgence after an up-and-down playoffs. Pacific Division. Johnny Gaudreau, he is the NHL points leader right now and arguably the favorite for the Hart Trophy. Clayton Keller of the Coyotes finally putting it all together. Connor McDavid of the Oilers, he's the best player in the world. Why can't he be in the All-Star game? Joe Pavelski of the Sharks having a resurgent year this year for them. Elias Pettersson, the favorite for the Calder Award. Leon Draisaitl of the Oilers, good for him. He's having a solid year. Brent Burns of the Sharks, having yet another phenomenal year. Drew Doughty of the Los Angeles Kings, having a solid year. Erik Karlsson of the Sharks, his first year in San Jose, been sensational alongside Brent Burns. Marc-Andre Fleury of the Vegas Golden Knights, yet another good year in his career resurgence in Vegas. John Gibson of the Ducks, arguably the best goalie in the league right now. He's kept the Ducks in the mix for a playoff spot in the Western Conference. And those are your All-Stars. And now I'm going to do my power rankings, and I'm going to go from 30 to 1 and make predictions for every team in the second half of the season. Number 31 is the Ottawa Senators. My bold prediction for them is that Guy Boucher gets fired. Ottawa always tends to fire their coaches, even during rebuilding years. Number 30 is the Detroit Red Wings. My prediction for them is that they name Steve Yzerman their GM and president of hockey operations. It's been rumored for a long time that he was going back to Detroit, and I think it's reality. Los Angeles Kings blow up their roster, but keeps Ante Kopitar and Drew Doughty. 28 is the New Jersey Devils. I'm going to say they fired John Hines despite them coming out and supporting him. It's been a very disappointing year for New Jersey, and I think they're going to make some changes, so I wouldn't be shocked if the coach gets sacked because I know they're not firing Ray Shero. No way. The Edmonton Oilers are 27. My bold prediction for them is that they trade their first-round pick and they still miss the playoffs. That's just the luck with the Edmonton Oilers these days. 26 is the Philadelphia Flyers. I think Wayne Simmons gets traded. I don't know where. I think a contender will pick him up. Maybe it's Edmonton, for what we know. That player fits the Edmonton first-round pick bill. But I do think Philadelphia makes some changes, and I think Simmons is a part of that. 25 is the Chicago Blackhawks. My prediction is that Artem Anisimov and Brandon Saad both get traded. 24 is the Florida Panthers. My bold prediction for them is that Bob Bugner gets fired. They've been a very big disappointment this year. I think they regret firing Gerard Gallant as he's having massive success in Vegas. 23 is the New York Rangers. My bold prediction for them is that they trade both Kevin Hayes and Mount Zuccarello. This isn't that bold, but there's a lot of people that think that they're going to keep and extend Kevin Hayes, but no, I think he's going to be traded. I think somebody overpays for him. I don't know who that is. 22 is the Anaheim Ducks. I think they trade one of their key defensemen. I don't know if it's Cam Fowler or Hampus Lindholm or Josh Manson, but I think they trade one of their defensemen. I don't know who. I think it could be one of the bigger names. I just have a feeling. I don't like how this Ducks season's going. The obvious prediction would have been to fire Rick Carlisle, but a lot of my bold predictions are coaches getting fired from certain teams. I have it already with New Jersey and Florida, but I'm going to go bolder with the Ducks and say they trade either Lindholm or Cam Fowler. Number 21 is the St. Louis Blues. I think they trade more than two big-name players not named Vladimir Tarasenko. So, let's say Jay Baumister, Alex Steen, and, hey, why not Ryan O'Reilly? You never know. But I think everybody's available on that team except for Vladimir Tarasenko. And by the way, I'd be surprised if they trade away Jake Allen too, because I think he's a guy that is pretty solid. I don't know why, I just think that he's a solid goaltender, and yeah, he's had some troubles, but I still think he has the upside to figure it out. Like we saw that with John Gibson in Anaheim, and even Freddie Anderson now with Toronto, Dubnyk in Minnesota, like a lot of big-name goalies around the league that struggle and then get better. I could see that with Jake Allen, so I don't see them trading him either. But maybe Baumeister, Steen, Colton Parenko, like that would work too. I think it's going to be those three. I think O'Reilly stays. Number 20 is the Arizona Coyotes. My prediction for them is that they trade for Jake Muzzin of the Los Angeles Kings. They need some help on defense, and I think they're going to go for the playoffs. Number 19 is the Colorado Avalanche. I think they trade away the Ottawa Senators pick. I think this team is under pressure to make the playoffs. A team that thinks that they have a chance to win. Do they trade that for a defenseman that can become available all of a sudden? Maybe they trade that to Anaheim for Hampus Lindholm. Could it be even to get a second-line player like a Wayne Simmons to Philadelphia? But I think that Ottawa pick gets flipped because I think that team is going to be desperate to make the playoffs, just like Edmonton out there in the Western Conference. Number 18 is the Vancouver Canucks. This is easy. Elias Pettersson wins the Calder Trophy. He has no competition, pretty much. He has that thing wrapped up already. Number 17 is the Dallas Stars. I think they finished third in the Central Division. This was a tough call because I think that spot is wide open between them, Minnesota, and Colorado. And the team I think that gets it will be Dallas. I like the improvement of Miro Heiskanen. I think the team is playing a little better even since the owner came out and made the bad comments about Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. I think both of those guys are going to have chips on their shoulder. I like the job that Jim Montgomery's done in year one. Number 16 is the Buffalo Sabres. I think Jeff Skinner gets traded again. I think this team's going to realize that they're not going to make the top 8, and they're going to trade away a guy in a contract year. That is Jeff Skinner. And they don't want them to lose him for nothing. So I can see them trading him to, hey, maybe the Dallas Stars. That could work. Or the Minnesota Wild. Like, there's other teams that I could see trading for Skinner, especially a team from the West. Although, out of the East teams, maybe Pittsburgh can get him. Washington. Maybe even Columbus. I could see him play for him, but we'll see. There's going to be a lot of suitors out there for top 6 second-line forwards. And then don't forget, there's always injuries that happen time and time again. Maybe somebody gets hurt before the trade deadline, which makes a team make a deal. Number 15 is the Carolina Hurricanes. My prediction for them is Sebastian Aho finishes the season with 90-plus points. He's had a breakout season for Carolina, and I think he finishes the year with over 90 points. The Minnesota Wild, my prediction for them is that they take on Bobby Ryan's contract to get Cody Ceci. I think this is a team that wants to get younger on the defense, and they take a chance on a guy that really hasn't lived up to expectations in Ottawa. In order to do that, Ottawa forces them to take Bobby Ryan off their hands. Number 13 is the Washington Capitals. 7 straight losses going into the All-Star break, but my bold prediction for them is that Alex Ovechkin almost gets to 60 goals. I think he finishes the year with 58, maybe even 57. The Pittsburgh Penguins are number 12. My bold prediction for them is that they trade for Matt Duchene. They seem to make trades with the Ottawa Senators often, as we saw last year for Derek Brassard. So I think they'll make another trade with the Penguins, but this time for Matt Duchene. Pittsburgh wants some new blood in there, and he'd fit nicely in their top 6. And I can see him playing with Crosby and Malkin, too. Like, he fit really nicely with them. Number 11 is the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think they trade for Mark Stone, another Senator. I think that Columbus wants to go for it in what could be Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky's final season with the Blue Jackets as their free agents this summer. So I could see Columbus trading for somebody that's young and still controllable. So let's go with Mark Stone. Although he's in a contract year too. But I want to see them trade for somebody that is young and would fit nice. And I think Mark Stone fits that. Although I can't see them going for Duchene or the next guy I'm going to mention who's out there. And I could also see Columbus going for one of the Ranger guys as well. But I feel like Mark Stone is a good fit there. Number 10 is the Boston Bruins. I think they trade for Derek Brassard. I've heard Brassard's name linked to the Bruins often lately. Pittsburgh obviously wants to trade him. Brassard did not work out there, so I could see them flipping him. Number 9 is the Montreal Canadiens. My bold prediction for them is that they stand pat at the deadline. I think this team thinks that it's not a Stanley Cup contender and that they're going to hold their assets. And if you're supposed to be rebuilding like the Canadiens are, then that's what they're going to do. And that's what I think Marc Bergevin's going to do. And he's been very conservative this year. And I don't think he's going to sacrifice his future to win now. But if he does, I think it'd be a little bit of a mistake. This team wasn't supposed to be a contender this year. Yeah, they have some pieces like Kotkaniemi to build around. But I still think this team has lots of work to be done. Shea Weber is a player that's kind of in decline. Jeff Petry's had a career year, but he is on the wrong side of 30, I believe, as well. I just don't see it ending that well with the Canadiens, especially if they go for the deadline. So I'm going to say Marc Bergevin stays put. And I think that would be the right move. Number 8 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Despite the late start, William Nylander hits the 50-point plateau. I really like Nylander, and he's playing for that contract, and I think he is going to produce. Number 7 is the Vegas Golden Knights. My bold prediction for them is that they win the Pacific Division for the second straight year. I think this team after the All-Star break is going to be coming out with a chip on its shoulder and wants to continue to prove everybody that last year was no fluke and we're for real. I think they're going to make a trade. I don't know how this team is going to improve, but I do think it will. Vegas is one of those teams that are aggressive. They went out and traded for Max Pacioretty this summer, which has helped their team. I can see them upgrading their forwards or even their defense as well. And I think they want to rally around Marc-Andre Fleury again. Number 6, the New York Islanders. This is another slam dunk prediction, and it's that Barry Trotz wins the Jack Adams Award. No coach has done a better job in the league this year than Barry Trotz. They hire him because they want to entice John Tavares to stay. That's why they hired Lou Lamoriello too. Ultimately, John Tavares leaves. How are the Islanders better without John Tavares? Who saw this coming? That's credit to Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello too. I think Lamoriello stands pat at the trade deadline, although I think he's more likely to make a move than Marc Bergevin with the Canadiens, so that's why I didn't predict that they'd stand pat, because I think there's a chance that they are in play for Matt Duchene or Mark Stone, and that they do end up parting with the first-round pick, because I still think that they want to build around Matthew Barzal and Anders Lee. They have solid goaltending. They need help on defense, so maybe they'll be in play for a defenseman. But I'm really fascinated to see what the Islanders do. But I think the easy prediction for them is that Trotz wins the Adams, and I don't think it'll be close. I think it'll be similar last year to Vegas with Gerard Gallant. It was just a slam dunk that he was going to win that. Number 5, the Winnipeg Jets. I think they trade for Dougie Hamilton. Hamilton's the best defensive player on the trade market, and I think Winnipeg is poised to improve their team. They have a boatload of forwards, and I think they're going to upgrade their back end and trade for Dougie Hamilton. Yeah, the Maple Leafs should probably be in on Dougie Hamilton, but I just don't think that Carolina wants to trade Hamilton to an Eastern Conference team. And I considered putting Cody Ceci to the Maple Leafs, but I don't think the Senators want to trade with their rivals. So I decided to go with Nylander at the 50-plus points prediction for the Leafs. And for the Jets, I'm going to say that they make a bold deal and package their first-round pick with a couple prospects to Carolina for Dougie Hamilton. Number 4 is the Nashville Predators. My bold prediction for them is that they win the Central Division. It's a tough race right now with them and the Jets. I think it'll be close. But Nashville is ultimately the better team, although Winnipeg with a possible addition of Dougie Hamilton would be a fine challenger. But I just like this Predators team a lot. They're built for the regular season. Both Juuse Saros and Pekka Rinne have been excellent this season. In net, their defense is great, and their forwards are pretty good. I think their power play will improve, and they'll win the Central Division. Number 3 is the San Jose Sharks. My bold prediction for them is that they finish with 2 top 5 Norris Trophy candidates. Yes. I think both Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns finish in the top 5 for the Norris. Number 2, the Calgary Flames. I think this is my boldest prediction on here. I think they trade for Jonathan Quick. I did mention in my Kings prediction that they blow up their roster with the exception of Doughty and Kopitar. Well, here's where Jonathan Quick's going to land. Calgary needs a goalie that's experienced and has been in big games before if they want to be a real contender to win the cup. Jonathan Quick has 2 cups. I think he'll help Calgary. He has a good defense there, possibly, if he gets traded there with Mark Giordano and Noah Hannafin. Bill Peters is a good coach. And they need an upgrade in net. Mike Smith isn't terrible, but I don't think he's the answer in a playoff series. So I'm going to say that Calgary goes out and trades for Jonathan Quick. Although I did just say that I think Vegas wins that division. And number 1, the Tampa Bay Lightning. My bold prediction for them is that the President's Trophy will be clinched more than a week before the regular season ends. This is one of the best regular season teams I've seen in a while. I remember the Rangers in 2014-15 clinched the President's Trophy pretty early. And I think that this Lightning team will do the same. A lot of those players that are on the 2014-15 Rangers are ironically on this Lightning team, like JT Miller, Ryan McDonough, among them. Anton Strawman wasn't on that team yet, or wasn't on that Rangers team. He was on Tampa Bay that year. That was his first year in Tampa Bay when the Rangers won the Presidents. But this Lightning team reminds me a lot of that Rangers team. Very deep on defense, very deep with forwards. I think Tampa will be in play for Dougie Hamilton, as crazy as that sounds. This is a team that's always big game hunting. They traded for Ryan McDonough last year. They nearly traded for Erik Karlsson this year. Last summer. So, I won't be surprised if Tampa Bay clinches the President's Trophy about a week and a half before the regular season ends, and then they'll sit some players to rest up for the playoffs, similar to what the New York Rangers did a few years ago. And I believe Nashville clinched the President's early last year, but I really don't remember. But that's my bold prediction for the Lightning. And I'm going to say that at least 5 of them become true. Because I'm usually okay at nailing these. I know some of them are a little outlandish, like the Flames trading for Jonathan Quick and the Jets trading for Dougie Hamilton. But you never know, and I've predicted crazy trades before. I believe I predicted Ryan McDonough to the Lightning last year, so I deserve a pat on the back for that, because I think a lot of people thought he was going to go to the Minnesota Wild last year. But he ended up going to Tampa. Now I'm going to do my NFL mock draft. I'm going to go from 1 to 32, as I do each and every time. There's some changes from the last one. And underway we go. Number 1, the Arizona Cardinals select Nick Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State. Bosa is the best player in this draft and certainly has a chance to be a multi-time All-Pro player. The Cardinals have needs everywhere on the roster other than quarterback, and getting a possible franchise player to lead your pass rush to go with Chandler Jones is very enticing. Number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. Josh Allen, defensive end, outside linebacker, Kentucky. Allen was the key cog to a Wildcats defense which rode them to a phenomenal season. His draft stock has risen dramatically throughout the season, and the 49ers are a logical fit because they need an edge rusher. Number 3, the New York Jets. Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle, Alabama. Williams was an intimidating presence in the middle of the Tide's defense the past few seasons. The Jets have a ton of needs, so they can build around Sam Darnold, and the defensive line is somewhere where they have talent that hasn't panned out yet, and putting Williams alongside Leonard Williams would be fun. Number 4, the Oakland Raiders. Rashawn Gary, defensive end, Michigan. The Raiders begin to build their pass rush by selecting Gary, who really didn't live up to his number 1 overall prospect ranking he was giving in high school. If Gary produces in the pros, This will turn out to be a great selection as they would finally replace Khalil Mack. Number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Jonah Williams, offensive tackle, Alabama. Williams was the best lineman perhaps in the country this season and did a great job protecting Tua Tagovailoa. The Bucs' bigger needs lie on the defensive end, but passing up on a possible future All-Pro offensive lineman to protect Jameis Winston would not be great. Number 6, the New York Giants. Dwayne Haskins, quarterback, Ohio State. Eli Manning's days of being a good starting quarterback in the league are over, and his future is uncertain at this point. Haskins handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley and throwing it to Odell Beckham Jr. would only jumpstart his career and would be fun to watch. 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kyler Murray, quarterback, Oklahoma. The Blake Bortles experiment in Jacksonville should be over as Tom Coughlin is regretting paying him last offseason. Murray recently declared for the NFL draft instead of going to baseball, and despite his height, he just won the Heisman Trophy, and look at how his preceder, Baker Mayfield, succeeded as a rookie in the league. 8, the Detroit Lions. Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, Houston. Oliver was once projected a top 5 pick, and his stock has dropped dramatically. The Lions need defensive line help with Ziggy Ansah possibly walking in free agency, and Oliver would be a good selection if he lives up the hype. Number 9, the Buffalo Bills. Dalton Risner, offensive tackle, Kansas State. Risner had a phenomenal college career, and there's a good chance he's a day 1 draft pick. The Bills' offensive line is awful, and they need to protect Josh Allen, and Risner would be a safe pick. 10, Denver Broncos. Drew Lock, quarterback, Missouri. With Case Keenum's future uncertain beyond 2019, the Broncos take perhaps their future franchise quarterback in Lock. His stock risen with a strong finish to his season, and he has a strong arm. 11, the Cincinnati Bengals. Devin White, linebacker, LSU. White was the best linebacker in the country this past season, and he'd be a fine selection. Vontaze Burfict is injury-prone nowadays, and Preston Brown is a free agent, so White would provide some energy to an aging Bengals defense. 12, Green Bay Packers. Deontay Thompson, safety, Alabama. If the Packers want to get back into contention, they must fix their secondary, especially after trading away Clinton Dix. Thompson is the best safety in the draft, and he'd be a great pick here by the Packers. 13, the Miami Dolphins. Clelin Ferrell, defensive end, Clemson. There are reports out there that the Dolphins are eyeing next year's quarterback class with studs like Tua Tagovailoa and Jake Fromm. Meanwhile, the Dolphins have needs at other positions, and Ferrell is someone that could start right away in the league and would pair nicely with Cameron Wake. 14, the Atlanta Falcons. Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, Clemson. Dabo Swinney has 3 great defensive linemen who project to go in the first round. Wilkins could be an immediate starter for Dan Quinn, and he could replace free agent Gardy Jarrett on the defensive line. 15, the Washington Redskins. Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle, Clemson. 3 straight Clemson defensive linemen taken as the Redskins pass on a quarterback to improve their interior defense. Lawrence to go with Daron Payne on their interior would be scary for opponents. 16, the Carolina Panthers. Greedy Williams, quarterback, LSU. A player of Williams' caliber should not drop this far as the Panthers snag him in mid-first round. Their secondary isn't great, and getting perhaps the best corner in the draft is a win considering Captain Mulnerlin isn't getting younger. 17, the Cleveland Browns. Cody Ford, offensive tackle, Oklahoma. Guess what? The Browns actually have a good roster, so they don't have any obvious needs. Where they can use some help is offensive line, as their tackles aren't good, and Ford can end up as a good left tackle to help protect Baker Mayfield. Number 18, the Minnesota Vikings. Greg Little, offensive tackle, Ole Miss. The Vikings were arguably the league's most disappointing team this past season, and their biggest issue was protecting Kirk Cousins. Little would at least help the Vikings' offensive line and find holes for Dalvin Cook. 19, the Tennessee Titans. Brian Burns, defensive end, outside linebacker, Florida State. Burns is someone whose draft stock has risen throughout the season due to his speed and good frame. Brian Arakpo's retirement opens up a need for the Titans, and Burns would fit nicely in Mike Vrabel's defense. 20, Pittsburgh Steelers. K. Neal Harry, wide receiver, Arizona State. Harry is someone who could wind up a steal from this spot, if not the most talented wide receiver in the draft. This would be a nice weapon for Ben Roethlisberger as they perhaps replace Antonio Brown. 21, the Seattle Seahawks. Montez Sweat, defensive end, Mississippi State. The Seahawks are a team that exceeded expectations but still have obvious flaws on their roster. Their pass rush is not what it was 5 seasons ago, and Sweat would be a fine pick to go with Frank Clark. 22, Baltimore Ravens. Jachai Polite, defensive end outside linebacker, Florida. Polite is someone coming off a breakthrough year in college, and his draft stock rose in light of it. The Ravens can use some high upside players on their pass rush, although receiver is probably the more pressing need. 23, the Houston Texans. Yadni Kasute, offensive tackle, West Virginia. Cornerback is another big Texans need, but Deshaun Watson badly needs protection, and Kasute would help them tremendously. The Texans have the worst offensive line perhaps in the sport, and that should be the team's top priority this offseason. 24, the Oakland Raiders from the Chicago Bears. Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver, North Carolina State. The Raiders now shift their focus to offense where they do need some young blood at skilled positions. Martavius Bryant is gone and Jordy Nelson is aging, so Harmon would be a nice weapon for Derek Carr. 25, Philadelphia Eagles. Byron Murphy, cornerback, Washington. Murphy falling this far would be a massive steal for the Eagles. He'd be a nice fit in Jim Schwartz's defense to go with Ronald Darby and Malcolm Jenkins in that secondary. 26, Indianapolis Colts. DK Metcalf, wide receiver, Ole Miss. The Colts suddenly look like a team that has the look of a contender. A defensive player is the wiser choice, but Andrew Luck needs another reliable wideout other than T.Y. Hilton, and Metcalf could be that. 27, the Oakland Raiders from the Dallas Cowboys. Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, Mississippi State. The Raiders continue to rebuild their defense by fixing their interior with Simmons. He's one of the better interior linemen in the draft, and this would be a solid pick by John Gruden and Mike Maycock. 28, the Los Angeles Chargers. Mack Wilson, linebacker, Alabama. The Chargers do have a ton of playmakers on defense, but their defense was exposed against the Patriots and need more help defending the run. Wilson would be a good addition to the linebacking corps to strengthen the unit. 29, the Kansas City Chiefs. DeAndre Baker, cornerback, Georgia. The Chiefs secondary got flat out exposed in the AFC Championship game loss against the Pats. Baker is one of the better corners in the draft and would have an immediate impact on a secondary that needs playmakers. 30, Green Bay Packers from the New Orleans Saints. Noah Fant, tight end, Iowa. Jimmy Graham misses the same player he once was in New Orleans, so the Packers should snag the best tight end in this draft class in Fant. He is very athletic, and he can have a similar impact as Dallas Goedert is as a rookie with the Eagles this past season. 31, the New England Patriots. Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke. Tom Brady is going to be 42 years old and can't play forever. Jones had a good Senior Bowl, and the scouts are taking him more seriously as a first-round possibility despite being injured last season in college. 32, Los Angeles Rams. Zach Allen, defensive end, Boston College. Trade acquisition, Dante Fowler Jr. is going to be a free agent after the season and would have a need at the position now. Allen's stock has risen after a fine season in college, and he would be a nice add to the Rams pass rush. That's it for the mock draft, and before I go, I'm going to discuss the NBA All-Star starting lineups. In the Western Conference, at the 2 guard spots, you have Stephen Curry and James Harden, well-deserved. And your 3 forwards, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Paul George, with LeBron James probably being the center, as George would be at small forward and Durant at the 4. That was the right choice, I think, although you can make a case Anthony Davis was snubbed because he's had a sensational year. But guess what? Anthony Davis is hurt right now, and his team is not good. And to me, the real guy that was snubbed here was Nikola Jokic, who's had a phenomenal season on a team that was the number 1 seed in the Western Conference before the Warriors got going. So if anybody was snubbed of a starting spot, it was Jokic, and I would put Jokic in there over LeBron James, who's currently hurt. And meanwhile, for the East, the starters are Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, and Kawhi Leonard in the front court, with Embiid starting at the center, Giannis at the 4, and Kawhi at the 3. And your starting guards are Kyrie Irving and Kemba Walker. They'll probably have Kyrie at the 2 and Kemba at the 1. I think they got it right with the East. There's no other way around it. Victor Oladipo's injury opened up another starting spot for somebody. And I like the idea of Kemba Walker starting the All-Star game in his home city of Charlotte, or his team's home city. I like that idea. And Kemba's had a career year, and he is somebody that is going to embrace the moment. And meanwhile, for reserves, my Western Conference reserves: Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Davis, and Nikola Jokic. Those are my reserves, and I think that DeRozan or Aldridge can be debatable. You have to put one of those Spurs players in, but I went with DeRozan because I like the idea of another wing in there rather than another big guy, because you obviously have Jokic, Davis, and Gobert, and the All-Star game, there's going to be a lot of small ball, so why not go with DeRozan instead of Aldridge? But both of those guys have had fine years on a San Antonio team that has, I got to be fair, exceeded my expectations. DeJounte Murray out the whole year. I thought he was going to be a breakout player, and then he gets hurt. And then I predicted on the podcast that the San Antonio Spurs would miss the playoffs and have a losing season, but it looks like I'm wrong there. And I'm going to reward a Spur by exceeding my expectations. Although, there's arguments for Tobias Harris with the Clippers exceeding expectations. De'Aaron Fox has an argument with Sacramento exceeding expectations, but you never know. Somebody could get hurt. Maybe Anthony Davis' injury is more serious than you think, and then somebody replaces him. People get hurt all the time. So one of those guys could end up being a replacement. And meanwhile, for the East, my reserves are Victor Oladipo, but he's hurt, so I actually have 8 on my list, because the first guy I'm going to mention is my picked replacement for Victor Oladipo, and that's D'Angelo Russell, who's had a resurgence on the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets are a team that looks like it's going to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Russell's improvement is a big reason why, and I'm rewarding him for it. Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Pascal Siakam, Blake Griffin, and Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic I picked because the Orlando Magic have exceeded expectations to some point this season, but they really have fallen back a little bit into the trap of they're not very good. I think they're going to end up tanking, but they won't be as bad as, say, the Knicks or the Hawks or the Bulls or the Cavs in that conference. They'll probably finish 11th in the East when it's all said and done. But let's recognize Vucevic for a career year. And I decided to go with Pascal Siakam over Kyle Lowry in terms of the other Raptors player, because I wanted to recognize D'Angelo Russell from the Nets for literally helping them become relevant again in New York. Obviously, they're going to be heavily talked about in the city if they make a bit of a playoff push here. And with the Knicks struggling, I could see that becoming a story on ESPN New York and WFAN. And then Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons, you obviously had to pick those two. The Sixers are a contender. Chris Middleton's obviously a contender for this, but I'm not a huge fan of Middleton, so I left him off. Although, hey, like Tobias Harris, you can make an easy case for that, but I want to reward Pascal Siakam more for his improvement, so I picked him over Chris Middleton. The other reason why I didn't choose Middleton is because I wanted a little bit more front court guys, because I felt like I had a lot of backcourt guys in the East with Russell, Beal, Butler, and Simmons. Although Simmons, you can play at small forward as well as Butler. And then even on the West side, I have 2 point guard reserves and 2 wing reserves in DeRozan and Klay. So I decided to go with a combo forward in Siakam, in which his game has improved massively this year. So I want to recognize him for a career. And then Blake Griffin had perhaps the best season of his career in his second year with the Pistons. So we'll recognize Blake, and he's still a big star in this league. So I pick him over Andre Drummond, and I think obviously Griffin's a much better player than Drummond. Before I get to my best bet, a little breaking baseball news. Justin Wilson signed with the New York Mets. 2 years, $10 million. A good signing for the Mets, who need bullpen help. He'll be probably their 7th or inning guy to get the ball to Edwin Diaz in the 9th. It'll be him and Familia manning the 7th and the 8th. So a much improved team in the Mets just gets even more better. And Bryce Harper and Manny Machado are still out there, obviously. And spring training is not that far away. It's literally a month away, and those guys haven't signed yet. That is incredible. And hopefully they sign before the Super Bowl. Because it'd make more fun the week of the Super Bowl if those guys signed, but maybe they're better off signing after the Super Bowl. But my argument is that they should sign before the Super Bowl, because after the Super Bowl, all the attention is going to be either towards Tom Brady and Bill Belichick or Sean McVay being the youngest head coach to win a Super Bowl. So if I'm Harper and Machado, I get it done next week, so the Super Bowl can get its luster after it's over. And if they were to sign after the Super Bowl, then especially with a big market team, then it would probably take some shine away off the Super Bowl. Especially if one of them ended up on the Dodgers, which I doubt, because the Dodgers went out and signed A.J. Pollock yesterday, and the Dodgers and the Rams share a city, and none of them are going to the Red Sox, so that wouldn't really take anything away from Boston. Unless if one of them signed with the Yankees, then I could see Boston kind of talking about that a lot, because obviously they like to bicker about the Yankees, and usually New York media likes to bicker about Boston and Philadelphia as well, so we'll see what happens with Machado and Harper. Now my best bet, brought to you by FanDuel. We did very well last night by hitting a 15-legger featuring college basketball and NBA. All the favorites that I put on the Moneyline Parlay won. And that was well done on my part. This one's a little trickier because it's not a lot of college basketball tonight. That's what makes this a little easier. There's a lot of NBA tonight. There's no NHL. So I have to get a little creative here. So maybe I'll throw Naomi Osaka in the mix like I have a couple other times with my best bets. So actually Petra Kvitova is the favorite, so this is what makes it even more ballsier. Let's go with Naomi Osaka getting, or I should say, plus 108. That is just excellent, getting her as an underdog. We're going to go with Bristol City in soccer. NBA, we're going to go with the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, the Los Angeles Clippers, although I don't feel super about the Clippers. That could be a trap game at Chicago, because Chicago's killed me a couple times because I bet against them on a best bet with Oklahoma City one time, and then Chicago won outright. And then a couple hold your breaths against the Bulls, too, when I went against them. The Milwaukee Bucks I'll play on here. The Utah Jazz, because Minnesota's on the second of a back-to-back, and the Denver Nuggets. I want to put Buffalo on here in college hoops, but I think Kent State can win. So it's plus 673, and plus Osaka with plus odds anyway helps this a little bit. So let's wager $1.50 plus 763 to win $11.45 with a payout of $12.95. That's it for today. I know, long podcast today, but there's a lot to get to. I'll be back tomorrow recapping everything from college basketball to NBA to NHL, all-star stuff. Look ahead to tomorrow's things. Obviously, we'll pick the Men's Australian Open winner, and I'll go to any other news that happens in the world of sports. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.